to publicize these Tuesday morning shiurim, but I'm not ready to do that because I feel like we would lose a certain honesty and a certain openness and a certain focusing on the people that are here. But this topic is one small area topic, and it's a topic that I believe is a major issue that needs to be dealt with. So that's why I'm making an exception for this week. Let me tell you what's been going on. Let me tell you why I'm feeling fired up about this year, even though it's really kind of been creeping up, and I know that I spoke about this a little bit last year. It's been creeping up over, in my consciousness over the last few years, but this year really, it's like bursting out of me a little bit. And that is because what I always suspected to be the case, I'm finding out is really the case. And that is that I don't know if the number is 99%, although it might be, but a very high percentage of Orthodox Jewish women hate Purim. A very high percentage. And not only does it mean that we're not doing something right, because the ways of Torah are pleasant, and the way some frum Erlich women talk about Purim makes Tisha B'Av sound good. So we're not doing something right if we don't have a certain ne'imos, if there isn't that joy and there isn't that if there isn't that sense of being part of a yantif. And it's even more boilate when it comes to Purim, because it's clear as day. If you go through the Megillah, just a simple reading through the Psukim, it's clear as day that more than any other yantif, there's a makayim for the wife in the yantif of Purim. The entire story of the Megillah takes place with husbands and wives. Achashverosh Vashti, Mordechai Esther, Haman Zeresh. I mean, when do you know anything about Paro's wife? There actually are midrashim about Paro's wife. There is something about Ishtay Shel Paro. But in the Psukim, you have Paroi, you have Nebuchadnezzar, you have Titus HaRasha. Have you heard of Mrs. Titus? But Haman comes with a wife. It's Haman and Zeresh. And you have all the Matzilim in Klal Yisrael, all those that have saved us over the years. Matisyahu ben Yochel and Kohen Gadol. You know anything about his wife? Yehuda HaMaccabee, you ever heard of his wife? Now that doesn't mean that the wives weren't present and important, of course, because a functioning Talmud Chacham only functions when he has a powerful Shalom Bayis and a healthy matzav at home. When I spoke to the ladies this Shabbos, I told them that I have a project that I want to start in Turo. The yeshiva sends us to Eretz Yisrael a few times a year, and they pay our tickets. They don't give us a choice about going. We have to go, and they pay our tickets. But it's also a perk of the job, Maisa, I'm forced, Nebuch, to go to Eretz Yisrael a few times a year. Well, it's a hard life. Okay? But every once in a while, they tell me that I have to go for Shabbos. And sometimes I want to bring my wife with me. I always want to bring my wife with me, but sometimes I'm able to. But the policy is they don't pay for that ticket. And I understand why. Because my wife doesn't work for the yeshiva, I work for the yeshiva. And I'm going to do a job. If I want to bring my wife along, that's a luxury. I understand that. But I disagree with it. Not because I hold that I should be given the luxury. Because I hold that when you send a Rebbe to Eretz Yisrael for Shabbos without his wife, you are sending half a Rebbe to Eretz Yisrael. And that's not as effective as sending a whole Rebbe. I hold that when a person goes with his wife, the Talmidim that are there see a Shalom Bayis. They see a mishpacha u'mishpacha, like it says in the Megillah, and that's a more profound thing. So anyhow, that's my That's my argument. We'll see how it goes. See what happens. But so of course, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife Tzipora was a very, very important part of Moshe Rabbeinu being Matzel Klal Yisrael. And Aaron's wife, and Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen's wife, and the wife of Yeshua ben Nun, and Osniel ben Kenaz, and the wives of Shimshon HaGibor gets a little complicated. They weren't all Jewish, and the wife of Boaz. Boaz marries Rus. That's part of our history, and the wives of David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. All of these things they're important, but they're not headliners. But in the Megillah, the wives are headliners, right? Esther Hamalka. We sing Shoshanas Yaakov, we say Baruch Mordechai, and we say Brucha Esther. Arura Zeresh. It's Kaivei Hashem La'atzmai. There's a makim for the wife. And what the pshat is, okay, those of you that will be in share on Thursday, I'm going to try to deal. I'll explain to you why it's true, how it fits into the tapestry of the fabric of Purim, why it's legeya to the essence, to the mahus of what's going on in Purim. That's not the subject of this share. But do you agree with me that you have to be blind not to see wives in the Megillah? And if that's true, then when there's a nitzachain, our bodies were threatened. How do we celebrate? We have Mishta v'Simcha, like the famous Lavush and so on, right? That's how we react to the tzara by celebrating that which was threatened. When the Megillah itself, what it goes on is about husband and wife, Esther Amalka, the sheet of the Rishonim that says Afhein Hayu Ba'osei Hanes means that they participated in the Nes, not just that they experienced the Nes. This is Purim is this is Vatil Bash Esther Malchus. This is about Esther Amalka. That the women in Klal Yisrael feel excluded from the day that we were saved by a woman. Does that make sense? So we have to do something. It's to me, this is crisis proportions. And the level that the women feel excluded, there's many different layers and levels. And I want to explain some of them. And I want to explain what we could do about it. Because while there may be certain things that a woman could do to be able to connect to the Yontif and to connect with her husband and her mishpacha better on Purim, but the main bulk of the work has to be on us. Let me backtrack a little bit, okay? A few days ago I was oimid on this pshat in the Gemara and Megillah. And Mo, I think I mentioned this to you yesterday. I'm telling it to everyone I meet. The Gemara says famously, Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, Hamoylech me hoidu ve'ad kush. That one man the Omar says that hoidu is b'seifa olam and kush is b'seifa olam. So hoidu and kush are two sides of the world. And Achashverosh is malach b'kippah. He ruled the whole world from me hoidu all the way to kush. And the other man, the Omar, says that Haidu v'Kush b'hadi hadadi havikaimi. They were next to each other. And kishem shemalach me Haidu v'ad Kush kach malach al kol, which I guess means with the ease or with the control, or that he ruled over this small area, so too he ruled over the whole world. Machlekes. What's the point of this machlekes? How am I educated now that I know this? What is the message here of this machlekes? So Libi Eimerli, that there's a very, very profound insight here in this machlekes. And that is that whenever a person needs to deal with an inyan, I want to deal with kas, I want to deal with taiva, I want to deal with gaiva, I want to be moilech. And the truth is, by the way, that the idea of being moilech, it really, really is about personally being able to personal control. I don't like the word control so much. The melech is like the bandmaster, the what's it called? The conductor. Okay, the control is not to squash. If you squash, you're not king of anything. The job of the melech is to orchestrate all of the kaiches that exist in his malchus. So when we talk about a kingdom, when we talk about being a king of a kingdom, if you could just squash and oppress your entire nation, that's not much of a melech. The successful melech is able to control by utilizing, by navigating, by creating a good harmony of all the different koiches in his malchus, that they get along and they all have a place. They all could express themselves, right? That's malchus. So, and it's in, by the way, in this inyan of Haidu V'Yad Kush, you have the famous Rabbi Akiva. It's mamish this idea that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim were being misnamnamed. You ever heard this? Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim were dozing off. So he asked them. He asked them a question in Divrei Agada. Mipnei ma zochsa Esther? What did Esther do to be zocha to rule over 127 Medinas? So he answered because she was zocha because her great grandmother Sarah lived for 127 years. Right? Vayu Chaye Sarah, Me'as Shana Esrim Shana V'Sheva Shanim Shnei Chaye Sarah. Sarah lived for 127 years. So what's the parallel? Cute, 127, cute. No, there's a parallel there. That when we say that Sarah lived 127 years, it means that she owned 127 years. She was Meilech Ba'atzma. The word Sarah is like the word Sar. It means royalty, nobility. She was Meilech for 127 years, means, I think there's a Shlach Kaddish. I think it's a Shlach Kaddish that says that that a Talmud Chacham in the Torah is called Zakein. Zakein is Shekana Chachma, right? It's coincidence. Zakein means old, and it's also a Talmud Chacham. It's not coincidence, 2 words, overlap. No, says the Shlach, no. Someone who's not a Talmud Chacham, he's not really so old. You could have a person who's 50 years old and he's all of 3 or 4 years old because he's only done 3 or 4 years of productive actions in his life. The times that we waste or destroy or use in a negative way, that doesn't go on the cheshbon. That's not our years. Those years we gave away. So the Shla says the oldest people are the Chachamim. They're the people that have used their years. They own their years. You know the difference, no? You know the difference if you felt it? The difference between owning a day or having a day own you? You know the difference? Like sometimes you just feel like you can't catch up, like the day is just passing by, and sometimes you just feel like you're on top of the day. It's a malchus thing. You own the day. Your time is yours. You can make decisions. You're going to use the time well and productively and feel good afterwards that you used it productively. Parenthetically, I will tell you, I had this whole conversation with Yaakov last night on the phone, because he was telling me that he did not have a productive day because he had to go pick up some lumber and they didn't have what he needed and he had to go take care of. So he has a lot of different projects and he has different projects he's taking care of and nothing worked out. So Stam, I'm just saying this as an aside, as a word of chizuk. I told him it's very, very important to be mechalik between was I productive or was the day productive? Whether or not the day is productive, that's up to God. That's not up to me. What's up to me is, was I productive? If I went to 40 stores looking for something and none of them had what I was looking for, the day wasn't so productive, but I was very productive. I didn't spend the day in bed. I was doing stuff. That's all Hashem wants from us. All Hashem wants from us is that we should be productive. You sit down in front of a Tosfos and it just doesn't go. Has that ever happened to you? Who hasn't it happened to? It doesn't go. Seder's over. Okay. Not such a productive Seder. Whether or not a Seder is productive or not, that's Hashem's decision. But were you productive? Yeah, you were very productive. You could have been in bed. You were in front of a Gemara. You were productive. I'm just saying, when you talk about being Meilech, it's very important to make that chilik. A lot of times people depress themselves and oppress themselves, beating themselves up because the day is not productive. It's not up to you whether or not your day is productive. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes that call. It's up to you whether you're productive. Am I making sense here? Stam, just as an aside, I want to just make that point. It happens to be all the time. What happens when I'm driving from Queens to Waterbury or Waterbury to Queens? I get stuck in traffic and I just lose 2 hours of the day. Okay, it's not 100% like that because I can use the time well in the car. If I don't get too upset, I can use the time well. But I have to be mechazik myself. That's Hashem's decision. I'm here, ready to do the job. Hashem decides. Okay, but anyway, getting back to this, so Sarah Imenu was Moilech on 127 years, so her granddaughter was Moilech on 127 Medinas. So when I use the mashal of that you want to take on something, and I'm using that Haidu Va'ad Kush, I didn't make up that parallel. Rabbi Akiva did. Okay? I didn't tell you this yesterday, Mo, but you hear what I'm saying? Like, it's not like stam, like I'm like making my own allegory. Like Rabbi Akiva made such a parallel. Okay, but anyway, what's my point? My point is that let's say I want to work on my anger. So I could work on my anger by looking at the broad issue. I have an anger management problem, which I did struggle with for many years. That's why I'm using that example. Okay? So I have an anger management problem. I have to globally deal with that problem. So I have to figure out, why do I get angry? What should I do when I get angry? What makes me upset? Is there a hashkafa I can learn that will help? Should I see a therapist? How do I deal with that anger? That's a global issue. That's if you hold Haidu and Kush on two sides of the world. I'm taking on the whole issue. That's one way to deal with an issue, but there is another way that's also important to know about. And that is that sometimes you could say, no, Haidu and Kush are right next to each other. And just like I'm Moilech on Haidu Vad Kush, I'm Moilech on the whole world. What does that mean? I could say, I know Friday afternoons I blow up. That's a blow-up point for me. It's stressful. It's disorienting. It's a blow-up point for me. Leading up to a family simcha, I blow up. That's my Haidu Vad Kush. That's not the global problem. That's one area of the problem. But if I could own that nekuda, that could have a hashpah on the whole issue. So if I could work on that, I no longer get upset on Erev Shabbos, that will impact my entire relationship with Kas. Does that make sense? So I could either take on the whole thing globally, or I could take on a prat. I'm saying this by way of hakdama. We went a few tangents, which I think are valuable, but I'm saying this by way of hakdama. We usually sit here on Tuesday mornings and talk about global shalom bayis. But now I'm here to speak about Purim shalom bayis. I'm not doing Haidu b'sayfa olam v'kush b'sayfa olam. I'm doing Haidu v'kush b'hadi adadi havakaimi. Because I believe that as husbands, and Be'ezer Hashem as future husbands, if we can develop a relationship with Purim that brings our mishpachas, that brings our wives into Purim in a healthy way, we will have accomplished something about our own growth, maturity, shalom bayis, and avodas Hashem, that will have hashpah on the other 364 days of the year. So we're going to speak about Purim, but our speaking about Purim is really speaking about life. Okay, but before I could get into what we're going to do, what's our job, I need to describe the gory details a little bit of why it's a nightmare yontif for women. Okay, girls, by the way, unmarried girls also struggle with Purim, some more than others, but they also struggle with Purim. It's the young marrieds that have the highest percentage of hating Purim. It's such a strong word to say, hating Purim. It's a hard thing to say. But it's true. It's true. It's true. I've tried it over the last few days. I mentioned it to a few groups of women. And across the board, they're like, yeah, I hate Purim. Of course. Some of them look at me like, what do you mean? Yeah, Purim is a bad day, of course. It's a bad day. Like, we have this whole male side of Klal Yisrael that's like, what? I've been waiting for 2 weeks for Purim. They're like, yeah, waiting for Purim. I have a list of bad days, Purim, then Tisha B'Av, So there's a subtlety about Purim that I need to tell you. There's a not subtlety and there's a subtlety. The not subtlety is that there's a not subtlety, there's a not subtlety, and there's a subtlety. Okay? The not subtlety, the absolute overt horror of Purim is when we get too drunk. Now, let me define too drunk for you, okay? Because my wife and I were driving to the Poconos this Erev Shabbos, and we drove back very late Matzah Shabbos. And on the way to the Poconos, we listened to Rav Aaron Schechter's Purim Masivas, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha. And on the way home, we listened to Rav Yitzchak Hutner's Purim Masivas. And And let me tell you, both of those men were quite intoxicated. You could hear it in their voice. You could see the comments they make. They were quite drunk. Okay? And I can guarantee you that both of their Rebbitzins were in the Ezras Nashim while they were speaking, and their husbands were drunk, kishikrusay shalit, and they were proud to be married to these men. Okay? I can guarantee that. Okay? Because the way they talked, like one of the Ma'amarim, Rabbi Aaron is saying that, Yaakov Avinu was Yairish Olam Haba, and Esav was Yairish Olam Hazeh. And like in his shikras, he just starts giggling, like he like cracks himself up. He's like, what does Esav have with Olam Haba? Like he was just like enjoying the yeah, that would be weird, just like that was like a shikr Talmud Chacham, like living in the Chazal and envisioning it, like these little jokes, these little puns, okay, I'm not talking about, that's not our conversation. So when I say we're getting too drunk, it's not about how much alcohol or how much das we have. Trust me, that's not the nakuda of the very, very not subtle. The nakuda of the very, very not subtle is that we lose ourselves. And one of two things happen, and both of them are horrific. Okay? One of them is that we vomit and get sick. I am very comfortable saying in public that it is usher to vomit. I'm very comfortable saying that. Okay? I'm basing it on a Gemara in Chagiga. The Gemara describes that it's an isser to kill a bug in front of another person. It's disgusting. Our job, we're B'nai Melech, Talmidei Chacham, Man Malchi Rabbanan. We're the aristocracy of the world. There is no group of people in the entire world that are prouder, more dignified, more majestic than us, B'nai Torah. For us to act in a way that there's vomit in front of other people, there's no excuse for such a thing. There's no world where that's okay. It just can't be. We are the shining majesty of the world, and we have to act that way. And we are so majestic, so aristocratic, that when we are without das and drunk like anything, we are still poised and dignified, and we carry ourselves in a way that that is the aristocracy of the world. Not even of the world. We are you understand that there is no level in Klal Yisrael higher than B'nai Torah? Do you know that? Do you realize that you are the highest level in the social structure of Klal Yisrael? The Lomdei Torah are the highest level. There is no higher level. You're it. Okay? You hit the top. Okay, we got to act that way. We have to act that way. We represent Torah to the world. When that happens, when a wife is disgusted or embarrassed from the way that her husband is vomiting or sick, I don't know what to tell you. I know that you grew up thinking that Chilul Hashem is when Goyim see Yidden do bad things. But I'm going to tell you that when your wife sees you throw up on Purim, that's a Chilul Hashem. It's just a plain Chilul Hashem. That's B'nai Torah. Zu Torah? This is Torah? This is Torah? That's not Torah. So that's first of all. And then there's the other part of vomiting. Vomiting comes in different forms. Okay? You could have physical vomit, but you could also have verbal vomit. You know that? Okay? And that is that sometimes people drink and they consider it that it's a time to vent and lash out at the people around them. Michelle, I'm sure I spoke about this last year. That's probably where I was coming in from. That people ruin their marriages permanently on Purim. People say things to their wives that they cannot take back because they were drunk when they said it. So obviously it was true, which may not be true, by the way. But it's very hard to walk back from the hurtful things that a husband says on Purim. And it's not just to your wife; it's to your children. And it's not just to. And by the way, a husband gets drunk, and he's not nice to his children. He's creating a legacy of hating Torah and hating Purim. Wow. Amazing. In one moment of bizaya, in one moment of harsh words, in one moment of leitzanis, he crushed a generation. Because it'll be rooted in that kid's psyche, that 10-year-old girl whose whose father says to her in his drunken stupor, "Could you get out of the way? You're always so annoying. I'm trying to do something important." That's it. That girl right now, something died inside of her at that moment. Okay? So, this is the very, very not subtle part. I don't even need to be telling this to you, but I just feel like to get there, I have to give that akdama. That that type of behavior, that people think it's a time to bash people, or I don't know, sometimes people feel like it's a time for them to express their hashkafic / political views about things. All yeshivish people are this, or all modern people are this, or all Hasidish people are this, or all Mizrahi people are this. When did Purim become a time to act? You're not dressed up like the Meraglim. I'm saying, when did Purim become a time for mass public Lashon Hara? When did that become part of the Avodas Hashem of Purim? That's also such an irony. It's such a hurtful irony. We have a mitzvah on Purim, Mishlayach Manos Ish L'Re'ehu. Okay? You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Let's not look at any Mefarshim, okay? But it says, Mishlayach Manos, send gifts, Ish L'Re'ehu, a man to his friend. Why do you think that mitzvah is? Let's try to explore without knowing any of the many, many, many Mefarshim. Just to think to myself, why would Hashem say I should give gifts to my friend? I don't know, is it such a stretch to say because Hashem wants me to be close to my friends on Purim? Is that such a stretch? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Yidden to be close to each other and to love each other? Is that not that's obvious, right? Clearly part of Purim. Look at the Shulchan Aruch. Look at the Megillah. Look at the mitzvahs of Purim. Part of Purim is connection. So then we get drunk and we create pirud. What on earth are we thinking? What's the pshat? It's not Purim. I always tell people, if you want to drink and get drunk like that, I can't stop you, but please don't do it on Purim. Get drunk after Purim. But you're getting drunk on such a holy, holy day to do the antithesis of the entire day. It's like doing an Aveira on Yom Kippur. Okay, I understand if you have to do an Aveira, do it after Yom Kippur. What are you doing it on Yom Kippur for? That's the very, very not subtle. Okay, and I don't even want to spend that much time on it, but I'm sorry, I get worked up from it because there's a certain level of what are you thinking? You're not thinking. And don't tell me I'm drunk, what do you want? Okay, come on, we graduated high school, we know how this works. Nichnas yayin yeitzei soid, have you heard that one? When you drink wine, the secrets come out. Don't be a fool. Sorry, I'm not speaking to any of you. I'm just speaking theoretically to the person saying that. Imagine this, okay? We have a Rosh Hashiva downstairs, okay? How many secrets do you think are in his head? Would it be safe to say that there are maybe 10,000 secrets in his head? He's been a Rav for 30 years and he's been a Rosh Hashiva for decades. You think he probably has 10,000 secrets in his head? You think they start spilling out when he drinks wine? Do you really think so? You know how many secrets I have in my head? I always think about Reb Beryl Wein writes, when he wrote a book about Rabbanos, he writes in the introduction, I left out all the stories that would have made this a bestseller. Okay, every Rav could write that. Okay, you think that Rabbanim drink and it's just and that guy is a Ganev, and that guy is a Roidef. Do you think that's what's going on? Nichnas yayin yeitzei soid means who I am comes out. Have you seen the beauty of a hardened guy getting shikker and suddenly he's hugging you? And you're like, seriously, this guy, I didn't even know he knows how to hug. I thought his hand didn't go in that direction. But suddenly when he drinks a little bit, suddenly he becomes, you see that he's a loving person. That's nichnas yayin yeitzei soid. When the pnimius, soid is the pnimius. It doesn't mean secrets, it's time to grow up. So this model of a person getting drunk and just vomiting either figuratively or literally, there's nothing, there's no makar, there's no source, it's usher, it's not acceptable. If you feel like you have to do it today. Do it today, get it out of your system, and on Purim, act like a holy Jew. Okay, that's the thing. And then, there's the little bit more subtle part. And the little bit more subtle part, it's so interesting, but it feels to me like the Ramah was touching that part, like the Ramah was dealing with that issue. Okay? This stuff that I just talked about, the Ramah wouldn't write about, because like he's writing a Torah, like this is like Avodah Zarah. I'm saying that's not even doesn't come into the Machane even. But the Ramah discusses the mitzvah of getting drunk. And he says such an interesting thing. Okay? Such an interesting thing, because as you know, there are many different shittas about should a person drink a lot, should a person drink a little. There's many, many different shittas about that. Okay, you could look it up in Shulchan Aruch yourself, or you could speak to a Rebbe and make a hachra for yourself. That's not my point. Okay? But yeah, you are aware that there are many different shittas and many different understandings of this mitzvah of getting drunk. Siman Taf Reish Tzadik Hey, Se'if Beis. Now before I start the Se'if, I do want to point out, do you know what Siman Taf Reish Tzadik Hey is about? Do you know what the heading is? Anybody know? Sudas Purim, that's right. Dinei Sudas Purim. So it's very telling that the mitzvah of getting drunk is a se'if in Dinei Sudas Purim. I just think it's a telling thing. That itself is an important hadracha of what the Chachamim had in mind. Okay? But anyway, he says like this. Chayav inish livsumei bepuria adelo yada bein or haman lebarach mordechai. Is a chayav for a person to get drunk. Bepashtas. Haga, says the Ramah, the Yeshaimrim, the ein tzarich lehishtaker kolkach. Some say, maybe sounds like a lot to you. Some say you're not mechuyev to get that shikr. Ela yishte yoser milimuda, you drink a little bit more than you usually do. The yishan, and you'll fall asleep. In your sleep, you don't know the difference in Ar Haman and Baruch Mordechai. Then he puts in these words. Pashat. He says, "Ve'echad hamarbe, ve'echad hamamit, ubelvad sheyechavein libay lashamayim." Whether you do a lot or you do a little, as long as you're l'shem shamayim. Do you think the Ramah writes that every time he writes a machlekes? Some say you have to eat a lot. Let's say something you have to eat 2 kazaysim by the Pesach Seder, some say you only have to eat 1 kazayis. Echad hamarbe, ve'echad hamamit, ubelvad sheyechavein libay lashamayim. Does the Ramah do that? No. But by this machlekes, the Ramah says, "Echad hamarbe ve'echad hamamit ubilvad sheyechavein liboy lashamayim." What is bothering the Ramah here? I'll tell you what's going on. What's going on here is that because Purim is a day that we celebrate the guf, it's a day of mishta v'simcha, it's a day of siyas yayin and achilas basar, of sudas mereim. Because Purim is such a simcha of the body, there is a midah that the Yetzer Hara slips in whenever you're focusing on that body. And the midah is selfishness. When a person is thinking about indulging, they're focusing on who? They're focusing on themselves. And what has happened, and maybe we've encouraged it too much, but what has happened is that Purim has become a day not of serving Hashem. I'm sorry for speaking strongly, but correct me if you think I'm wrong. It has become a day of serving ourselves. When we were younger, we spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of Purim we are going to have. And it was important to us to have the most Geschmacka Purim possible. Can anyone connect with that? Is that something, you recognize that? What is that? Does anybody go into Rosh Hashanah? What's the most Geschmacka Rosh Hashanah I could have? Okay, we do want it to be meaningful. But we understand that we are here to serve Hashem. When Purim comes, somehow we become infants. Infants are only worried about themselves. Have you noticed that about children? They only care about themselves. It's not disgusting in infants, because that is how Hashem created them. Okay? Shalom brought his baby for Shabbos, and he's trying to have a Shabbos with his Rabbeim and his Chaverim, and she just wants his attention. That's all. Did she tell you one time, you know what, you go, I'll be okay? Did she tell you that one time? No, because her job is to focus on herself. That's her job. But at a certain point, we're supposed to mature, and then we're focused outward. We're reaching, when Purim comes, we're making even a cheshbon of how much to drink based on what would be most geschmack for us. You know? When I was much younger, when I was in Beis Medrash, I used to joke about this, but I realized as I get older, it's not so funny that so many people mess up their Purims because they try to have last year's Purim this year. Have you ever noticed that? You know, especially some of you guys like, last year I was at Eretz Yisrael, I was with my Rabbi. Yeah, okay. But that was last year. But what's the whole pshat of the whole thing? The whole pshat of the whole thing is that we are trying, what's my Purim going to be like? I want to have a Purim. Okay, so that's one thing when you're single. I can't say necessarily you've reached the highest madrega of Avodas Hashem if you're living Purim that way, but that's one thing. But then what happens is that the single guy gets married. And when he gets married, he has a wife. And his expectation is, lo yolenu, his expectation is that his wife will also be there to service his having a good Purim. How many husbands sit down before Purim to think about how she will have a good Purim? No. Her job is to service, her job is to manage the kids so that they don't get involved, mess up his Purim. And to deliver Shalach Manas to the people he's not interested in going to. Of course, she also has to make the Shalach Manas because he's not interested in that. I don't think it's crazy to say that if men were able to, they would send their wives to listen to the Megillah for them. You know, like, you can take care of that for me. I'm working on Chayav Inish, to Chayav, I have work to do, If you could just take care of that, listen to the Megillah, send me a text that you heard every word, I could check that off my list, Oh, unfortunately, we have to go hear the Megillah ourselves, It's like something we have to do. It's like this, and even that feeling, that feeling? This like annoyance, like, to do the Megillah now, then the fun could start. Yeah, I think the point was the Megillah. I think the Ikar Presumei Nisa is the Megillah. Like, that's a part of the Avodah of the... It's like this nuisance we have to get out of the way so we can start the party. I don't think that's what Chazal had in mind. The Nekuda is, it's a fundamental shift. And when I spoke about Hoidu V'ad Kush, that it's in one place, I was talking about this. I'm going to get to a subtlety in a moment, okay, that I really need to share with you. But this Nekuda, if you just came to hear this, it's worth it. That we become babies on Purim. Do you notice that? We become babies on Purim and we're concerned with ourselves. And that is not what we came into this world to do. We did not come to be self-indulgent babies. That's not what we came to do. And it doesn't look good on us, that type of self. We're very selfless, loving, caring people. And it doesn't look good on us. That's why I feel like I have to speak out about it, because I feel like there are so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful B'nai Torah that just need to hear this one time and it will click. There are people in this room right now that it's clicking, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, it just needs to click by us. Like, what are we doing here? What's going on? What's my Suda going to be like? What's going to be for my Suda? A guy gets married, there's a decision to make. Should he go to his in-laws? Should he go to his parents? Should he make a Suda at home? And then there's, the invitations, which Suda, right? You know about this, right? Which Suda do you go to? I had this crazy, horrifying thought in my head of looking at the Purim Suda. Please forgive my irreverence. But in my mind, I was thinking the Purim Suda by a lot of people, it's basically like a Super Bowl party where the guys are having fun and the women have to serve the food. Like that type of thing. You have the occasional woman who also is interested in the Super Bowl. And you have the occasional woman who's interested in Purim Suda. But it's like a guy's night. A woman could go into labor and her husband would be like, is in the middle of the Super Bowl. You couldn't wait a little bit? Like, seriously? You have to go into labor in the middle of the Super Bowl. I hope they have a TV in the hospital. Like that type of thing. We treat Purim like that. We treat Purim like that a little bit. Let me, before I get into my very, very subtlety, because we have to go to Beis Medrash, let me just give you the other picture, because I don't like to just be negative. I want to give you the other picture. And I think that there's not a single person in this room that's not capable of giving your Purim a facelift that could transform your Purim. And I want to promise you something. I promise you that if you do Purim the way Chazal intended, you will have an incredible Purim. And you will have a sense when Purim ends that Purim made a roshim on your life that you can take with you. It's not just this crazy day that's some foggy memory in the back of your mind, but it's a day that you could take with you. It's a day that you are proud of. And I'm not saying not to drink. It's a conversation. I'll get to that in my very, very subtle. Okay? But I'm not saying not to drink. And I'm not saying not to enjoy. We should enjoy. Chazal told us, Oira, v'simcha, v'sasa, and vikar. That sounds like a lot of enjoyment. It should be a day of tremendous enjoyment, where a smile doesn't leave your face. It's such a happy, incredible day. But I just want to give you a picture of a Purim that's a real picture. Okay? Which is, and Mirza Hashem, I'm looking at all of you as future married guys. I'm imagining a married Purim. You could extrapolate if you want to Purim now, but I'm not so concerned. That's not a Tuesday morning sugya. Okay? But first of all, before Purim comes, I'm sitting down with my wife and I'm discussing the Seder Hayoim of Purim. We're having a conversation about it. And if she has apprehensions or fears about Purim, I want to hear them, and I'm not pushing back in a negative, selfish way. I'm listening because her having a Purim is part of my achrayas. You know, it says in Shulchan Aruch that a person should make sure his wives and daughters hear the Megillah properly. It's part of the job of a husband to make sure his wife is makayim that mitzvah properly. It was le'olah al dasa mechaber to say that it's your obligation to make sure your wives and children have a Purim. But avada, that's also part of the obligation. You're sitting down with your wife. Okay, maybe as your family grows, you're sitting down as a family, and you're discussing Purim. You're not instructing Purim. You're discussing Purim, and you're listening. Maybe she says you were not nice to me last year when you were drunk, and then you discuss that. You say, I understand that's a very, very difficult thing, and I want to apologize for that. This year I'm going to drink less. So I hope that you could be comfortable with that. Maybe if there's a bad incident, sometimes a husband has to take a year off from drinking to show his wife that she comes first. You could be makel like the Ramah. I promise. It's okay. Even the Sfardim could be makel like the Ramah. Okay? After that conversation, so we decide now, part of the conversation is also what will be Geshmak, because that's the idea of a Purim Suda. Where will be inspiring? Which Purim Suda will be tzniistic? A Purim Suda that people are drinking and men and women are mixed? It's usher to go to. We do not go to a mixed Suda on Shabbos. We can discuss in another Tuesday morning share what the hashkafas are. You know, that's a sugya. But there's no world where guys are drunk and men and women are sitting together while guys are drunk. There's no world where that's acceptable. Okay, it's just the Satan is dancing by that table. Okay, that's not a Purim Tish. So of course, where are we going? That's tzniistic. That's appropriate. Who's going to be there? And is it going to be a place that's going to be comfortable and geshmak for me? And is it a place that's going to be comfortable and geshmak for my wife? Is she going to feel comfortable there? No, let's go to this Suda. All my friends are going to be there. Yeah, but I don't know a single person there. Okay, it's not about you. You're not supposed to have a good Purim. Just I am. No. She also has to have people there. She also has to have reason to feel comfortable there. She also has to be that the home that you go into, she feels welcome there as well. And she's not just like a added appendage that's sometimes not necessary. Okay, so I'm having these conversations before Purim. When Purim comes, I'm attentive to my family. Purim night, I'm not getting super drunk. Depending on where I go, could be I have a few l'chaims, but I'm not getting super drunk, and I'm helping with Shalach Manis. It's also one of the mitzvahs of the day. In fact, Shikras is not even one of the mitzvahs of the day. It's a se'if in Sudas Purim. But I'm making sure to be Mekayim the mitzvahs properly. Matanis Leviyanim, I have to be Mekayim properly. I have to make sure to give the right amount to someone who I trust is going to give it to Aniyim on Purim. It's an important responsibility. I'm taking care of that. It's advisable even to take care of that before Purim. Okay? I'm davening like a mensch. Purim is a day that you could accomplish incredible things with your tefillah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is just waiting to listen to your tefillahs on Purim. You know, there might be a few guys in this room that are looking for shidduchim. Purim's the day to daven. And Baruch Hashem, there are guys in this room that found shidduchim. And Purim's the day to daven. You know, that everything should go b'shah taiva and mutzlachas. And so that's Purim night. I don't want to sleep so little Purim night. I want to get a good night's sleep if possible, because I need to be proactive on Purim and attentive and sensitive, and there's a lot of balls in the air. I have to juggle a lot on Purim. So I don't want to go somewhere where I'm going to be up half the night and I'm going to sleep 2 hours, and I'm going to wake up the next day and be sarcastic or difficult person to deal with, or chas v'sholom maybe miss the Megillah. I'm not doing that because I have responsibilities, and I'm a ben Torah, I'm a mensch. It's beautiful if there's a place I could stop into to hear some divrei Torah on the night of Purim. If it's possible, if I live in a place where such a thing is available and my wife doesn't need me, so then, that's a wonderful thing to do. But the main thing is I got to focus. The morning is coming. When the morning comes, I'm getting up, I'm learning Megillah. I already had a conversation with my wife before. We already discussed who's listening to the Megillah when and where. Okay, many families, once you get married, many people like to daven vasikin on Purim, besides the fact that it's an extra special tefillah, but people like to start the day early, especially this year that it's Erev Shabbos. There'll be many more people by vasikin this year, because it's such a short year, but I discussed that with my wife. I'm not making the decision when I wake up in the morning on Friday morning. We discussed this already. Maybe she's going first. Maybe she wants him. In my house, it was often like that. My wife was out by Megillah before I woke up because she wanted to be being misader things in the house while I was in shul. Every family is different. Okay, when I come home, I'm not jumping into drinking. Okay, this year is Erev Shabbos, so some people eat 2 meals or eat a meal in the morning. It's less like that this year. But I'm making sure to eat something healthy when I come home from Megillah, because if I'm going to be drinking, I have a responsibility not to be vomiting on my family. And the way to do that, I drink like a mensch. And drinking like a mensch means that I'm hydrated. It means that I have some food in my body, and I'm ready to take on this mitzvah of drinking properly. But I know that drinking is not while I'm running around shalach manis. Maybe I'll have an occasional l'chaim if I'm not driving. Of course, it goes without saying that I'm not taking a l'chaim and driving. Of course, I'm not even talking about that. Of course, that goes without saying that I'm not doing that. But my focus, what I'm doing shalach manis, is to do the mitzvah of mishlayach manis ish l're'ehu. So I'm going around with my family, or I'm delivering shalach manis for my family, depending on what's going on. I'm leaning into my wife. I'm leaning into her and to her needs at that moment, because when the Suda comes, it's going to become more about me. So before the Suda, I'm trying to do my job as a husband. Before I start drinking a lot and before I might lose focus, I'm trying to do my job as a husband, and I'm leaning into it. What do you need? Are you taken care of? Are you there? I'm not just disappearing. I'm not just getting distracted. I am focused on my mishpacha and on my children. And your children are wearing costumes, and they're excited for you to be excited for their costumes. So you're taking time. You're not just that mommy knows about the costume, but you know about the costume, and you notice that your daughter is a princess or your son is a soldier or whatever, or the opposite. I'm not judging, but you're leaning into it, and you're complimenting them, and you're taking pictures with them, and you're getting involved with that, and you're not looking at that as a childish, stupid part of Purim, because this is their simcha. And then when the Suda finally starts, so then if your wife is okay with it and you've discussed it with her and there's a shalom bayis going on, then you could start drinking, but you hold on to enough of your hakara that chas v'shalom you're not going to do anything. Number one, the chas v'shalom you're not going to do anything dangerous. When I say dangerous, I don't just mean physically dangerous, I mean marriage dangerous, emotionally dangerous, Yiddishkeit dangerous, and I'm going to be able to be mekayim my chiyuvim. I hold on to that little hakara. Those of you, just by a show of hands, how many of you have been drunk in your life? By a show of hands. Okay, so I'm assuming that you guys know that drunk is not an on and off switch. Okay? And not just that, I think it's kedai to speak this out, we don't lose our bechira when we're drunk. You know that, right? There is a level of blacking out, but for many of the levels before that, there is some level of bechira. We are drunk, but there's some level of bechira, right? We're not babies here. And there is such a thing as having a maturity that I know I'm drunk, but I'm holding on to a certain hakara. I know when to stop drinking. I know what's necessary. And not just that. What happens if an emergency happens, okay? You're drunk, and chas v'shalom, your son falls and hits his head. He has to go to the emergency room. Okay? So maybe you're not in shape to go to the emergency room. You have to take care of the other kids, or maybe you are going alone to the emergency room. Do you guys know what I mean? That there's a level of drunk where I'm drunk, I'm crazy, I'm saying crazy things, but then when, your son fell, you're like, okay, you're on. You could do that. It's hard. It's an effort. It's not what you want to do, but there's enough hakara there that you could focus on what you need to do. Shalom, you know what I mean, right? There's a certain makom where you could do that. You want to hold on to that if possible. Okay, to be aware, to be available, and then have a great time, and sing songs, and enjoy the Yantiv Suda, and make it freilach for the people around you, and compliment people, and bring people in, and be mekayim mishleach manis ish l're'ehu with your mouth, and with your actions, and with the way that you act by the Purim Suda, and bring joy to Hashem. Bring joy to, I'm starting to get emotional, I'm sorry. Bring joy to Hashem as He sees that Yidden are loving each other in a tzniistic way. And let the wine, by the way, wine, of course, that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is wine. You could ask your Rabbanim, but that's what they're going to say. The mitzvah is wine. Let the shikras, and this is the most beautiful way to go out of it. If you get so shikr that you just conk out or you're done, okay, I'm not, there's such a thing. But the most geshmak of Purim, especially this year, is to be shikr to the point that it could then go up, plateau at the right place, and then start coming down. And some of us get anxiety when that happens, and some of us get a little wobbled, and it's a little disorienting when that happens. I promise you, if you do Purim right, that coming down, that uncomfortable part, the coming down, will be sweet. Okay, will be sweet and wonderful. Okay? And then you start being a little more with it, start being a little more connected, start being a little more grounded, and you'll see, you'll be able to get ready for Shabbos, let's say if it's an Erev Shabbos, you'll be able to get ready for Shabbos, and so on, and you'll still be, do you guys know what I mean? That we really stay shikr for hours later in a certain place. We know, you know what I mean? We know that we're not totally there, but we're functioning in society. And we're not 15. We don't need to prove to the world that we're still drunk. Do you know what I mean? We have grown up. We can do the job and do it right. There's a little bit of shikras. We go into, this year we'll go into Shabbos. Kabbalah's Shabbos should be Geshmak, Emirat Hashem. We'll probably a little more dancing this Kabbalah Shabbos than usual. But that's us managing like adults. What?
I'm very high.
Where are you for Purim?
Blue Ridge.
Enjoy. Come by. The Rav usually comes by at some point, so maybe you could arrange that. Not later, earlier. Later, he's not budging. Anyway, let me get to my subtlety of subtleties, okay? My deeper subtlety. This is very important. I want to reveal something to you. I want to reveal something to you that adds to the difficulty of the drinking, but it's something that sometimes the women themselves don't fully realize, okay? And this is very, very important. When you have a relationship with a wife, that's a real relationship, the type of relationship that we talk about in this shir, it's a very real relationship. So when you're sitting by the Shabbos table with her, it's not just your body that's with her. It's who you are that's with her. It's your pneumius that's with her. Women are, number one, sometimes afraid, and number two, sometimes disoriented, and number three, and this is universal, they feel lonely. Your wife depends on you for emotional support. You're her guy. You're her rock. You're her play. She vents to you. She cries to you. You're friends with her. You share things. You share when the kids do something cute. There's so much that's shared. And then when you get intoxicated, she feels like, who is this guy? Who's this guy? And over a day of Purim, she feels like she's, try me, ask some women, ask some married women if I'm right. Over the day of Purim, she feels a little bit like she's going through Purim alone. She feels alone. Many women don't even know how to explain that to themselves. Why do I feel alone if my husband's right here? But once we start drinking, they feel a little disconnected from us. Now, if you didn't build an emotional kesher with your wife, so then see me on another Tuesday morning. Okay, that's an issue. But that's not what we talk about here. We talk about having a deep, vibrant, emotional connection. If you made a deep, vibrant, emotional connection and then you're intoxicated, She's sitting with you, feeling like she's sitting alone. Okay? That is something that you can do something about. You can't make the feeling go away 100%. It is part of the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim on some level, but you can do something about it. First of all, you could acknowledge it before Purim. And second of all, if you know it, I could tell by looking at this room, I'm looking at people that get it, what it means to be shikr, you can try to make contact. You know, it's like contacting, like the reaching out of your shikras to contact a sober person, you know. But you can make contact and check in with her. If she's having a hard time with the kids, she can tell, will be able to tell, like, you're chapping, you're getting it. You got it. She can chap that you're present, that there's a makom that you're present. And I think that if you do that, you could literally save a wife's Purim, that she feels like it is Mordechai and Esther. It is a Ish v'Isha together. Even though you're out there in the world of Lo Yoda, Bein Or Haman, L'Baruch Mordechai, you might be out in that olam, but even though you're out in that olam of Lo Yoda, you still have an anchor in her where she feels like you're there for her. Okay? This is something that you can do, and this is something we've talked about in different ways about Yom Tovim Be'ezer Hashem before Pesach. We'll go over that, but this is something you could do even berabim. Now you're going to be shikr, so you have to be shomer. Tznius is of utmost importance when we're shikr. When we drink, there can't be any breach. There's nothing private that goes on between a husband and wife that comes out while we're drinking. That's not the side that comes out. Us, B'nai Torah, we drink and drink and drink, and not a single private moment is expressed in public. Our relationships with our wives are too precious to be public. They're private. Okay? And yet, even when you're sitting by a Purim Suda, and there are 20 people there, you could look out for her, find her, make eye contact, and show her that you're thinking about her. Okay? Or you can make your way over to her sometimes. Pull her to the side and say, I know, I'm shikr, whatever. I just want you to know, I'm thinking about you. You could say nice words to her. You can do something. Help her feel like in your shikrus, she remains your priority. Do you know what that does for a woman? You know what that does? It doesn't make it super, super easy, by the way. I don't want it to sound like what I'm saying is that if you do that, then she'll be like, oh, Purim is easy. No, it still could be lonely. But it's a different world. It's not like my husband has departed. He's gone. No, it's not like that. He's in Adela Yoda land, and he's thinking about me. You know what that feels like? That's rooted. That's connected. And that's the goal. Okay, so that's the super subtlety that I wanted to point out, that it's possible for a wife to feel lonely while we are with them. That being said, I'm going to end, but I just want to end with one more thing. We have some chasanim in the room, and probably more of you that are in the process of dating, and maybe there are people who are in the middle of shidduchim. I want to point out to be very, 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 very zohir about contact with a kala on Purim. That there's no shikr contact between a chassan and kala. Impossible. Even though, Shlomo, you're going to be by your Suda, shikr, and you're going to be like this, you want to just tell your kala how important your house is going to be, you're going to have it l'shem shemayim. Do not speak to your kala while you're a shikr. It's not next year, Mitzvah Hashem. It's not for this year. A chassan and kala, a boy and girl that are dating, should not be in contact while they're shikr. If you feel like it's important to reach out to your kala on Purim, which I can imagine that those B'nai Torah in this room, that Yomim Tovim are important to them, and their kalas are important to them, want to connect with their kala on Purim, do it earlier in the day. Say, I'm going to start drinking soon, but I wanted to call you before, or bring shalach manas if you're in the neighborhood, or whatever you're going to do, and spend time chassan and kala before drinking. It's not appropriate. There's no, there could only be bad effects. It's just not a tzniistic thing. When Mitzvah, I'm sorry?
Why?
Because our self-control is limited, is more limited when we're shikr, and because as it is, as we discussed last time, there's a lot that we're holding in when we're a chassan. There's a lot that we're holding in, and that's a difficult thing that we're doing because we're warriors for Hashem. But we can't to just invite that type of thing where I'm going to say something that's so obvious, but I'm going to express my love in a way that it's not time yet. You can't backpedal from that. You know, you want to be able to save what's supposed to be saved for after the chasana till after the chasana. You know, a chassan might be thinking about how amazing it will be that when he, and there's nothing wrong with these thoughts. A chassan might be thinking about how amazing it will be that after he's married, he'll be able to sit on the couch and hold his wife's hand. That's a very beautiful thought. I'm very pro that thought. But if he says it to her on Purim, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to be talking about that kind of relationship between a chassan and kala. And it could come out because it's not a bad thought. And it's an ernst thought. So that's, I'm just giving you, you asked why, I'm giving you an example, but it's not the thing. And also, if he acts in a way that's silly or not appropriate, she doesn't need to see that at this point. She'll discover how silly you are after, that's fine. But right now, we keep our dignity, we keep our kaiches. So I just wanted to mention that about chasanim and kalas. You could ask your rabbeim. Some of you, I am your rabbi, but you could ask you, and that's what I think. But you could ask your rabbeim. But to me, it's a davar pashut ma'od that the contact between a chasan and kala on Purim should be pre-drinking. It's very special. Very special. I was engaged during the Yom Naraim. I made sure in Rosh Hashanah to see my kala. It's not a time for a chazan and kala to hang out, but I went to my kala's house to wish her Hashanah Tov. How could I not? I'm going to marry her this year. It's Rosh Hashanah. Like, how could I not do that? You know? And on Sukkot also, we saw each other on Sukkot. I told you about that last time. You know? But not in Shikros. Okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the kayach, first of all, this year, to have an amazing, amazing, amazing Purim. Not because we need the amazing Purim for our selfish needs, but because our amazing Purim will be a Kiddush Hashem, and will bring Klal Yisrael together, and will bring Mashiach Be'ezer Hashem. One Yeshua triggers another, and you should all be Zaycha, Mirz Hashem, that when you're married and when you have families, that you should be able to create a new trend in Klal Yisrael. Let's be the husbands whose wives look forward to Purim Be'ezer Hashem. Yashikayach.